All right, we are live. Welcome to the AI Chef Live Show. Chef Kevin, how's it going today?
It is going well as usual in the AI kitchen, Chef David.
Always good to see you. And I'm going to see you in person in just a few days.
That's right. We have what, eight AI chefs live sessions at the Cydia Commercial Integrator Expo conference in Denver.
We will be busy. I have our aprons packed. You got our hats. We're good to go.
Yeah, we're good to go. So I'm super excited to I mean the digital hats are cool. You've done a good job with those, but we're wearing the real hats. That should be, I don't know, I think we're going to make quite a scene.
It'll be fun.
It will be fun.
All right, so let's get on to the news for the week.
Yeah, so hey, so this you know how when you make a dish, like the plating, they often say first you taste it with your eyes. So how something looks is important, but ultimately it could look good but it also needs to taste good. So let's go to the first story because I think that's a cooking analogy for this. So this study from MIT, I mean, that said, well, as the Fortune article here kind of captures, 95% of AI pilots fail. This got a lot of press coverage. I'm sure you saw it on LinkedIn. So lots and lots of people picked up on this. But this is where my analogy comes in. This this is a great heading. But the truth is, you got to go read, you got to taste the actual report because it didn't really say this. So
That's what I was
that's the
thinking.
big takeaway. So we'll put the link to the entire report. I don't know if you had a chance to read the entire report, but it really it set a super high bar. So first of all, it said for a pilot to be deemed successful, it has to rapidly generate significant revenue. So first of all, it's a pilot. And second of all, it had to do it inside of 6 months, and they had all kinds of other criteria. And so, most pilots you don't expect are
That's
going to
massive success.
fundamentally,
Yeah, that's massive
right?
success. That's not a successful pilot. That's right.
Right. That's what you
That's
want.
that's
Right.
a
So,
high, high bar.
right. And then and a colleague actually suggested this, which was super great idea. They took the report, they put it into AI, Gemini or ChatGPT. We did it in both. And then, there was a prompt that said, "Hey, can you point out any logical inconsistencies or reasoning fallacies in this study?" And I'll tell you what, there were a heck of a lot
Mm.
because, it said only 5% succeed, but then in another section, it talked about how in a couple of industries, specifically around customer support and in media, people were seeing a 20 to 25% reduction in headcount, which is obviously a significant savings. So there was a lot of, you know, different data points. And at the end, there's an MIT project called NANDA, which is about agentic AIs and having them work together. And they really have a vested interest in saying that the current approach doesn't work so that you use this kind of approach. So I fed it in. I said, hey, ChatGPT, is this a marketing piece or a study? And it said, some of the study, they did do the interviews. 50% of it is a real study, and 50% is more of a thought leadership piece where they kind of have a vested interest, right? So
Mm.
the devil's in the details, Chef David, and food has to look good and taste good, once you look at and sample all the final product.
Yeah, well, there's different definitions of success. I mean, were my last 10 flights successful? Yes, I got to where I wanted to go, and I got there safely, very safely. It was 100% successful. Um, was it a successful experience? No. I didn't have enough foot room, and the person next to me was poking me, and the ice wasn't the right kind of, how we all are, right? Yeah, right.
Well, that's
So
right. You can set the bar as high as you want, and in this particular case, you know, the author set a bar very, very high, and therefore, yes, only 5% of the pilots met their bar. But, I would say we'll put the link, read the study. If you agree with, that, then maybe you only see 5% success, but I think there's a lot more details.
Sometimes it's just all about getting a headline that gets the clicks, and this
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
achieved that. All right, let's go
yes,
on to
yes.
our next story.
Okay,
You
which is the
ready?
story that you found on a gaming site. So there you go.
Yeah, I don't know why this was this. There was if you click through, there's the actual Microsoft announcement which explains how it works in detail, and this was the clickbait article about the announcement that says, Microsoft launches it but says don't use it. It's like the last story. It's a little bit clickbaity, but there is something to it. And it's one of those stories that when I first saw it, I don't know why I always do this. I say, "This is dumb. I already knew about this," and it's
Right.
something totally new that I didn't know about. Um, I saw Copilot in Excel, and I thought, we've done Kevin and I, we've done shows about Copilot in Excel. We've done tips about it. We've shown how you open the panel and you say, "Hey, Copilot, I want a table that does this," and it gives you the formula, or it even puts the formula in for you. I'm like, what can this be? This is a Copilot function in the function bar instead of sum or what are all the Excel functions? All I could think of now is sum.
Lookup. Remember we did
Lookup,
that X
yes,
lookup. So,
lookup. One is Copilot, and so this was actually cool. The example they had a I should use this for my webinars. You get at the end of your webinar, you get the people put in their comments, and there's a list of
right,
all the comments. So they did Copilot and selected the comments, and I forgot, but they were using it's an LLM, use LLM language. Said make a new column that shows whether or not people liked it. So next to each
right.
comment, it was just positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, and you could look at all the comments in your whatever your product reviews, your webinars, your people coming to your website, instead of reading each one saying, "I enjoy this," or "I think there could be more of this," or "there could be less of that," just see positive and negative. I mean, okay, that's just something that could be done in Excel, but the fact that it was done in the field with the natural language, this is a new
Right.
cool thing. So that's the real story. The clickbait story is, of course, if you can't see the formula, you can't trust the formula. And this is a very new thing. So, of course, they're warning if you use this for, Bank of America, if you're going to be using this, come on now. You got to double check it and be careful. But the clickbait story is Microsoft releases new products and says, don't ever use it.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things there, Chef David, that when I was thinking about this. So, obviously we've talked about this a lot. Like, programming languages, Excel formulas, they're deterministic. So when you say sum this or do the average of these cells, I mean, it always calculates the sum or the average or whatever formula you do the same way. You know, Large language models, as we've talked about, are probabilistic, meaning when you put in a prompt one day, if you put it in the next day, you're going to get something, subtly different. And so typically in the context of a spreadsheet, that doesn't really work well. But there's other functions in Excel that work like this. So for example, a lot of times I do work with Excel and you want some like just numbers to work with. So there's a random function. And so you say like, well, okay, here's 100 cells, just use the random function, put a number in there times 100 because I want a number between 0 and 100. Now, every time you recalculate that spreadsheet, it will give you new random numbers. That's a problem if you want to have some static results. So all you do, and the same thing applies to the Copilot function, is if you have it generate data or do the sentiment analysis like you talked about, you copy and you paste values, those random numbers of that Copilot output, and then it doesn't change. And we
Yeah.
do this all the time, right? So it is a good warning, but um, what I liked about it was this was a lady, a woman, I believe, at a hackathon came up with this new Copilot function, and then I think it was a Microsoft internal hackathon, and then they decided to include it. And it's
Oh.
only available if you go to Excel. You won't find it probably because it's right now only available for the, I don't know what it is, Ring 1.5, like the very early release Ring. Um, but this woman actually came up with in the hackathon some other good functions as well that I hopefully they'll make their way into Excel because there's so many functions in Excel. It's cool to see new ones. So,
Nice.
have at it. And, I think it's a great article that you found on PC Gamer. Go figure.
Yep. We'll put the link down below. All right, on to the next one.
Okay. Yeah, the next one. So I think yeah, let's go to it. I think that before I talk about this article, for full disclosure, these are not real hats that we are. Is that a cat going
This
by?
is this is a real
That is
cat though.
that is a real cat. No, that rhymes. These are not real hats, okay? We have digitally altered our visuals. But here's the thing. We knew we did this. I mean, you did this because you're the OBS master. Um, but this article, which was on the BBC, it seems that for certain content creators, YouTube decided that they were going to subtly enhance and
Oh.
improve. So they were smoothing people's skin tone, which, and the article goes into detail. We all can
YouTube
do
is
that with.
helping.
Well, YouTube is helping, but that's the problem is, your phone, you can set filters. We can do it with whatever, whether you're using Zoom or Teams or, WebEx. There's things where you can set filters, but then you're choosing to do it. And
Yeah.
I think it was a real valid point that the content creators were saying, I'm publishing this content of me. I'm happy with what it looks like. But then when they watch it back, YouTube has decided to enhance it or change it in a way that they didn't agree to. And so, I think that is something, and the article goes into more depth about it's already hard to, trust what you see on video, but it even gets harder to trust it when it's not only the creator that's modifying it,
Yeah.
now it's the platform, unbeknownst to you, is also modifying it. So I thought it was very interesting. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, the creator should always have control at the end of the day. It's the old long and winding road Phil Spector thing, right? Anyone who's a Beatles fan knows that the Beatles were breaking up, and it was very acrimonious. It was very bad,
Right.
and they had recorded all the Let It Be songs, and they weren't in the studio to produce them because they were all broken up. And they brought in Phil Spector, who was an amazing producer,
Right.
and Long and Winding Road. Paul McCartney is the creator. He's Paul McCartney, for crying out loud, of the Beatles. He wrote the song. He recorded it the way he wanted it done, and he was very clear about that he didn't want stuff added to it. And
Mhm.
Phil Spector added entire orchestra. There's violins and cellos and all this stuff. It's so dramatic. It sounds like a romance novel, and people love that version.
Right.
Phil Spector is very good at what he did. He made it better, maybe, but no. And there's, you could find this online. You should look it up. People, look it up. There's a lot. You could find a letter that Paul McCartney wrote, and he was like, "Do not ever, ever, ever do anything like that again to any of my songs." He was mad. You
Right.
don't mess with the creator's work.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I think YouTube got called out on because people were saying, man, the more I like one video like got, I don't know, 500,000 views, and the more that the creator looked at it, the more that they were kind of disturbed that that's them out there, but not really, right? And
Yeah.
I think yeah. So we are happy to be wearing these digital hats. I fully approve of that. So there you go.
Yep.
Okay, so
On to the next one.
next article.
This is interesting. So we always talk about large language models, and anyone who's into linguistics would immediately say so. By if you're not just saying language models, you're just specifying large language models. That leads me to believe there must be something called a small language model.
Sure.
Otherwise, you would just say language models, and there is. And but no one ever talks about them, so they must not be good. No, they're amazing. For a lot of our business uses, I was thinking they're going to say it's 2% more efficient, 10% more, 20% more efficient. No, 20 times more efficient. So
Right.
2,000% more efficient. In terms, and we're talking about how much resources and how expensive. Oh, the stuff is so expensive. It's burning up so much water. 20 times more efficient. does a better job, more effective. Why aren't we talking about this? And it's like, well, because everyone's, got the hype about the large language models. We spent $57 billion on it. We're going to use it. And it makes me mad. It makes me think about when I go to the grocery store and I see one little person, and maybe it's not as, hopefully it's not as bad in Canada as it is in Florida. In Florida, it's terrible with this cartoonishly large truck. And it's like, come on, it's like, okay, maybe you need a big truck sometimes, but this like, I want to get the silliest, most, it looks like you put in an air tube and pumped it up like a balloon the size of this truck. You need a ladder to climb into it. And someone's like, oh, I got the milk. Come on, you don't need a large language truck to get a little thing of milk. You need a little bicycle. And with large language models, to go back to the story, I didn't think there was a small language model. I'm like, yeah, of course. We did a story last week about how they're building these massive factory facilities in
Right.
Norway that are going to eat up all this, well, they're going to be renewable, but they're going to use up, a lot of renewable windmills and all this kind of stuff. And meanwhile, we could be using the equivalent of bicycles. There's small language
Okay.
models.
Okay. So this what I love about this story is this man, this really pushed your buttons here, Chef David, going into the giant mega trucks. And my wife always says those drivers are compensating for other parts. Um, However, which I think is actually probably true. Anyway, with respect to large language models, okay, a couple of things. Like lots of people know about small language models. I mean, the article did say, hey, like the the benchmarks, everybody wants to say our model outperformed. And so the large language models are doing a better job across the board on some of these benchmarks. But when we talk about, if when we go, talk to Zoom, they say, well, we have a federated model. Cisco says we have a federated model. Microsoft says they don't say that, but they say we use something called smart mode. All of that means that those, and other providers, the inference costs, so the calling another API or calling their own API, that has cost to them. So they want to minimize the cost. So they are trying to, for instance, do the processing if they could do it on the device. So small language models are ideal because you can theoretically now run them on phones, right? So from a privacy perspective, the story that you talked about with the new data center in Norway, there's also these sovereign issues. So if you can run it in your own data center, you're happier because you're not making a call out to OpenAI or another provider. So I think a lot of people, and even Microsoft Research is doing a lot of research. And when does a large language model, like as you chop it down, when does it become a small language model, right? If you take away a billion parameters or 2 billion or 10 billion. And so I think that they're trying to figure out, by growing a model or by shrinking a model, when do you lose or gain performance? Um, but I think that it is interesting because I think the future will be a combination. So I'm glad that you highlighted that particular, article, and we got to talk about some small language models. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. If
And
there's
it's
a
like a
better way of doing it,
Prius,
let's do it.
a little Prius or a
Yeah.
little mini to get. If you're going to get milk, you should drive a small car. If you're going, right, you got to have different cars. See, now this is wasteful. You're saying if I do a big grocery load, I got to have an SUV. Maybe I have to have a mini if I'm just getting milk. So now I have more cars than I need. I don't know.
Well, yeah, but okay, but there's a lot of people who just use it to get milk.
Okay, okay, that is true. There
Yeah,
you
there
go.
are some people who, I do construction on the side. Okay, but a lot of people are like, they're getting milk.
Okay. Well, that was a good a good variety of stories that
Yeah.
we brought into the AI kitchen. We're always looking for stories that you find interesting. If there's something that you want the AI chefs to dissect and serve up, chop up, I don't know, we would be happy to do that. So feel free to comment here or send over some stories to us.
Yep. Let us know in the comments. All right. And with that, let's head out. And we will be skipping next week because we'll be at Cydia But we will
Yes,
be back here live 2 weeks from today.
fantastic. But yeah, come by if you're anywhere near Denver, come by and see us live. Thank you very much, Chef David.
Take care, everyone.